My first question was all right, just a little bit background. Let a little bit of background. Uh, the story was actually it's actually a metaphor for a very real issue that happened in the Philippines. Actually still happening right now, but it was very intense during 2017 and 2018. 2016, 2017, 2018. So that's the whole this is where the whole story happens. So it's where this story came from rather. Um and then it's very most specifically the story was about a specific victim of the issue. Um should I all right. I'll tell the name of the victim. His name was Kian de los Santos. He's a child victim of was killed during one of the drug busts in the Philippines, and it became very big. It became one of the catalysts of many protests in the Philippines. So it's one. It's where the story. This is it's where the story was based from. So I guess yeah. Sorry. Before I also go to that. In the story, there were actually a lot of things that I removed. Um, uh, particularly in between the chapter one and chapter two, there was actually supposed to be a lot of other characters. Two of characters that I removed from the story was there was supposed to be a friend of Gian, like a school friend, and that friend was supposed to have a brother that is a cop whom Gian idolizes. So that's where Gian had the idea of being a cop in the first place. But I thought that the reason I removed those characters and all of those timeline was because I thought that putting a minor character only for the sake of exposition is a little bit of it's kind of a waste for the story. So I thought there would be a much more smarter way of creating an exposition for a very important characteristic for a character. Uh so that's why I removed those characters. So just I don't know if I should put them back. So that's one of my questions later on. But yeah, my first question is, do you think this? Do you think the story would stand on its own, like without knowing the context of why the story was written in the first place, or without knowing where the story came from? Do you think that the whole story and the whole story structure, when you read it, would exist on its own? Uh, yeah.
Okay, so I'll be the first taker again. Um, so I had a sense, obviously, because I'm also from the Philippines. So I had a sense of what could have been the inspiration of this story. But when I was reading your story, I also felt that you were trying to do something else with it, especially since you have a mythical figure right through the capre. So and I guess part of it is also your write up where you said that it's supposed to be a friendship piece between the capre and this boy. So that's actually how I also read the story. So it's a friendship piece that's set in a very um, sketchy, sketchy, or maybe that's not the best word, but yeah, friendship story set in like a rather sketchy or like a yeah time with a lot of like turmoil words. But yeah, that's how I read it.
Yeah, yeah. See. Okay. Is there anyone else?
Um, I think your story kind of reminds me of Edgar Calabia Samar's Johnny Silang series, wherein he also incorporates Philippine mythological creatures into the current situation of the Philippines. And I think it's also similar how you explore and describe the happenings in our current situation in a more cultural and more relative way for us in here in the Philippines.
Thank you. I actually do love. I've only read the first Jano Silang, but I did love the book. Thank you.
So this story, well, first of all, I read this as like kind of like a manuscript for the graphic novel, right? So I didn't read this as I tried to imagine it in graphic novel form, and like you're kind of narrating what is happening. Um, so to answer your question, sorry, in my mind, what I imagined, because people are saying, what this story reminded them of, it reminded me of uh, that Netflix animation called, I forgot what it was called. Do you remember what it's called?
I don't
Uh,
know what you're referring to, so I
so
can't help you.
sorry, there is this like Philippine mythology, like vampire hunter.
Is that Trece?
Yeah, that's right. That's it.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah, exactly. So it reminded me, just because people are saying what it reminded them of. Does the story hold up on its own? I'd say, yeah, it's a complete story. Is it is it super interesting? Uh, I don't know if it's, well, definitely the mythological parts were interesting, and I think if that's some, and I think that's something perhaps you could play up more because, well, I actually picked up on the reference to Kian de los Santos right away, just with the name Gian. And so I already knew what was going to happen, and this is gonna be a tragedy. So it's fine to it's fine that you know the ending already, especially if you're here to write a tragedy and not like a mystery, right? So I think playing up also the tragedy part more and like highlighting that more would be a place where the story could improve, basically.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Um, can I uh can I specifically ask someone from here? Is it okay?
of
Sure.
course.
People have name called, I mean, like, called names, not name called. But
I
yeah.
I only I only know of Ega not being from the Philippines, right? Ega, you're from Indonesia, right?
Yep.
Have you read the story?
Um, currently
I,
right now. So
it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I just because I'm asking because someone from not in the Philippines who doesn't really have any context of what happened here, it could be I just wanna have some kind of insight if the story holds up as much as it should. But I guess it's late. It's for later. My next question would be, or sorry, is there any
um
other? Sorry, go.
yeah. I mean I have nothing to say about the story yet, but the notes glossary is really helping. Like I'm on this one paragraph alone. And I have been scoring up like 5 times now
Ah,
because I
yeah.
keep forgetting what are they. I mean, it's so cool. I mean,
Sorry.
when if you make this comic, you may probably will make it like character introduction in my head. Like Santelmo is my reading on the character introduction. I don't know. I think that yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
so I wouldn't like keep going back to glossary if in comic. I think.
Yeah, that's gonna be a prob. It's something that I should do if I do make it a comics. Thank you, Ega. Is there any other uh want to answer? I'm going to move on to the next question if that's okay. Um, so my next question is, I was actually asking a while ago on Iya's story about the emotion of the character because personally I'm not very good in gauging the mood of the story and the characters themselves. So how do you find it? Like in the story, how do you find the overall tone, the overall emotion? Is it understandable? Like the characters' emotions, is it something that you can get behind to? Something like that.
So that's a good question, Marks. Um, I I'm commenting this based on this being a friendship story, and I was wondering if it's possible to add more scenes that would show the bond between the Capre and Gian. Because I love the way that they become friends. It just feels so grounded and like they become friends because Gian's grandmother believes in Capre and is nice and is very kind to a Capre, right? So I like that, there was that kind of like a familial connection with YG and even bothered to reach out to a Capre. So I love how the friendship starts, but the friendship itself, I didn't really see. And that's also because I guess there was like there was a time skip, right, of like a 2 year time skip probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 3 years, 3 years, yeah.
So um there's a lot that can happen in 2 or 3 years with a friendship, right? Especially since people are Gian is literally growing, and I don't know if the Capra is growing, but Gian is growing. He's also coming of age, um and yeah, maybe part of that, change of perspectives, all those things, also getting to know each other. Maybe the grandmother died in those 2 years, I don't know. So I do wish that I saw what those 2 years were like, so that by the end of the story, when Gian dies and the Capre sees, his dead body, like it would really feel more tragic because we could feel what the Capre lost. So yeah, I don't, yeah, maybe exploring Gian's maybe family life more or school life more. You mentioned the minor characters you thought of about like they're there so that Gian has a reason to want to be a cop. For me, like we could do away with those characters and it could just be his family probably wants him to be a cop. Maybe his grandmother wants him to be a cop. Maybe he was a bullied kid and he wants to be a cop for, to be the good guy, or like just those things I think would help utilize the characters that you have now. Um, and maybe, just having a peek maybe into Gian's family life would also give reason for him to hang out with the Capre. Like, why is he hanging out with the Capre late at night? Is there violence at home? Is the Capre able to give that comfort or that sense of home or that security that maybe Gian doesn't get from his home? So I think if you have that context, it would also show, um, it would maybe defamiliarize the Capre to a Filipino audience, because um, a lot of us grew up maybe fearing for Capres. Well, I was, I was definitely warned of like, don't go to a baleta tree. There's a Capre there. I grew up with those horror stories. So I think it would be cool to just maybe defamiliarize that, to also show um, that beauty of friendship. So yeah.
I just want to say thank you because in regards to what you said, I actually, like I've said, I got a lot of things in order to shorten the story, and I actually did write a whole act of them being friends. Like, there was supposed to be a yearly thing from 2016 to 2018. Like, each birthday of Gian would there would be like uh a visit to the it's a whole act of them just being friends that I did got, because again I thought it would be too much, and it would tie to my next question, I guess, of me being not being able to, and not confident enough um to write the escalating, what do you call this, the what the things that are happening from beginning to climax. So that's one of the things that I actually removed. But thank you for that, because I've just now realized that yes, it is important for to actually show them, how to build up their relationship as friends. So thank you for that. And that's actually a very good point about is there violence at home, because I could and I should give Gian a context of why he hangs out with a specific friend a lot. That there's nothing about that in my story. So that's a good point. Thank you very much.
Just to bounce off what Steph said, actually, when I was
Hmm.
reading the story, what because you're asking about, does this character feel real? I didn't feel he was super real. I think the most real he felt, and I don't know if this is my own projection or thanks to the writing, is when he was describing how the kid was, doing these offerings, even if his grandmother wasn't there anymore. And I kind of imagined, and why is that real? Because I kind of imagine how, if you're a naive kid and you're told something, especially by someone who you care about, like your grandmother, and you perform these rituals that are kind of absurd. And so I sort of imagine this kid, doing these absurd rituals, and that's what felt real to me. So just to bounce off what Steph was saying, perhaps perhaps you could introduce some bit of like uh, that process, the process of how he's doing these rituals, and perhaps because she mentioned, he's a bullied kid. So what if his bullying starts or is manifested by in the form of how he's made fun of for doing these weird rituals, um, and maybe you could take it a bit further, and perhaps even the grandmother is ridiculed like by the community, and it's like, oh, look, now even the grandson is doing all this weird shit that the grandmother was doing, blah blah blah. And then, oh, it turns out there's actually a capre, and so now the kid feels special, and you can root for this character because he's ostracized, etc., etc. But it turns out he was able to find a great friend in the Capre. As for the escalating part, and I think I mentioned earlier how you can amp up the tragedy. I think um I think maybe if you, I mean, this is just to add to the suspense, so to say. Maybe there's something in particular that happens that night. Is Maybe there's something that the Capri needs that only GN could fulfill, and that's why it's really important that he goes out or whatever. Because otherwise, it doesn't really feel like a tragedy, because this is um, a tragedy kind of almost feels like it was bound to happen, right? Whereas in this case, the story was pure dumb luck. I mean, like not only did he just randomly come across this shooting, where nobody else saw it, right? So like, why is he in that particular spot at that particular time? Um, that's one, right? That's one random aspect, and then the other random aspect is him falling down, tripping, and having his toy gun, go off on him, which is super unlikely, and yet it happens. So we have these like really random events, which has not, there's no escalation, there's no like tension, suspense, right? There's no foreshadowing, it's just pure dumb luck. And I think for a good tragedy, it almost has to feel like it was inevitable and nothing could have been done to prevent it. And if that's your frame of mind, and then you can amp up the tragedy by, adding some stakes. For example, like, why is it that this couldn't have been prevented, right? Why is it so important that he go out that night, that fateful night, or whatever? So, like Steph said, maybe is it violence in the household? But I think you could. I mean, I can. I'm sure you can find something as you're writing, perhaps their, their relationship, and then tie in that, like, uh, tie it into the relationship. However you end up writing the relationship. So it's not like out of the blue. Like, I mean, if you're gonna go with the whole like violence at home thing, then you gotta write the whole violence at home part, right? So, I'm sure you'll find something that will be exciting.
Thank you very much. That's actually a very good point, especially about why Gian would need to go outside at that very moment. It's just so more tragic. Thank you.
Um,
Actually, I think sure, go.
sorry, I will just I don't know if this is like completely disagreeing with Raphael about the characterization. Like he was talking about, like describing the ritual thing, and maybe this is also your question about, you're quite unsure about the characterization. And the way I was also thinking of it is, since the final output is supposed to be illustrated, I think since you're an artist, you would, you know which details to put, for example, in his manner of dressing, especially, through the years, right? The 2 or 3 years that we follow him, that would, help with building character. I mean, of course, there's also the dialogue and the plot itself. But I think the manner of dressing, rituals, habits, mannerisms, I think those things will help you with characterization. So yeah, and I mean, you're a visual artist, so I think you would know what to put, what not to put, those things. So I wouldn't worry too much about the characterization.
Actually, that doesn't really. I don't think those like contradict each other. But actually, that pretty much answers my supposed next question, which is how do I flesh out the characters, making them more real on the audience eyes? And that's correct too. Creating specific, no, I think creating specific things for the characters, showing them what like a normal person would do in everyday basis, makes them a little bit more real, like the mannerisms, for example, that you've said. So
Yeah.
thank you. Um, is there any answer for the part where I how do I, because I'm not particularly good in writing the middle section, as I've said, especially the escalating events that lead to the climax. So um any other advice on how I can make it better?
I think I'd like to add something, especially in the time skip part.
Sure.
Um, I noticed the characterization of the copper being closed off and something like that. And it was really, it's not weird, but it was kind of sudden that he showed up immediately to Gian during the offering.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be nice if, like, Gian tried it like a few times before the copper was able to like open up or something like that, because it would really show like how the friendship really developed from this being just, him just offering to some weird tree, and then finally something shows up. And I think it would tie in with the grandma died situation where, I don't know, maybe the copper PT, like, showed PT to Gian at some point. Like, he was trying to comfort him when he was offering for his grandmother at the tree or something like that. It can show like how this closed off Capre suddenly became so close to this Filipino child all of a sudden. Just a thought.
Thank you. I think I have my very first my very big revision. Thank you for that. In the story wise. I never
I,
thought of killing the grandmother because I was thinking she would be an one-off character. Like, and again, I don't really want to write a lot of characters that would only be used for exposition. And I think the grandma I thought the grandmother would be the only character to be the exposition of everything, right? But I never thought of creating the grandmother as this character of which to connect Gian and Capre in a more deeper sense. Like I could write the Capre as actually being friends with the grandmother as opposed to the grandmother not knowing if the Capre really did exist.
oh, that would be cool.
That gives me an idea. Thank you so much. That gives me another idea.
I
Thank
think
you.
to bounce off also on Hamahiru's point, because so far a lot of the comments are centered on GN, right? And I feel like maybe it would also be more interesting if we also got um some backstory, maybe also of the Capre. Um, so yeah, maybe being friends with the grandma is one thing, but maybe it also ties in with what I said earlier with defamiliarizing the Capre. But I think it would be cool to um see also maybe the Capre as his own character as opposed to just, just being the friend. Um like I don't know what this is arc because I feel like there is you kind of introduced something about the Capre where he's kind of like losing his power, right, as the barangay becomes more developed, or like more trees are chopped down and things like that, like he is losing his power. So I think there's something there that you can also explore on his side, so that the relationship feels more dynamic as opposed to the Capra just being there, just being the shoulder to lean on. um or yeah, so I guess this would also connect with Raphael's point that GN would do something for the Capre that, yeah, and then things will go haywire from there. um but yeah, I think it would just make it more interesting if the Capre also has his own baggage, and because yeah, like I said, you've kind of planted the idea there.
That's actually yeah, that's right. Thank you. I'm actually as you guys are uh, advising me. I'm actually reading my original like my I did this like 5-point act kind of thing. It's very messy, but I'm rereading it right now and most of the things that you're saying right now actually does kind of make everything clicks. Thank you. So you said that the story would exist or would can stand on its own like without knowing the context na as at least even though it's a little bit messy, it's kind of understandable in a way that you still can understand it without even knowing the context. um so like I've said, this will be a graphic novel, right? So since illustrations will be a big part of the process and experience, is there anything you can suggest on this area? I think Rafael said something about this a while ago, especially about that part of showing, for example, the process of rituals, just to make the character even more real. Is there anything you can suggest on this area too?
Not a suggestion, but like a compliment. That I like how you wrote your, maybe let's call it a guide. I like how you wrote the guide because it was so descriptive and vivid that I could almost imagine the different scenes, like when the Capra is watching Gian before appearing to him. Like it's it's so vivid. Like I can imagine like the angles and stuff. So it made me excited for to see your project like really come to life. Um, yeah, sorry, just I just felt like you should know.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My overall process on how I do things, which is I don't think should be or uh should should be done by anyone, is I draw first and then I write the story after. I think that shouldn't be the process at all, but thank you.
Well, I would say like whatever works for you, right? I mean, so far, you know, you're on the right track. I mean, that's what it feels like. So I don't think there are like shoulds and shouldn'ts when it comes to process. Just do.
Thank you. Is there any other suggestions?
Um, this is like a. I'm just throwing it just because you still have like
Sure.
a lot of time.
Sure.
Um, how do you imagine the vibe of your book? Because I mean, we all know it's a tragedy, um, and we know that it's set in not the nicest place in Metro Manila. Um, how do you imagine balancing out the tragedy versus like a charming friendship story between Gian and the Capre? Because I
Uh
sorry, also to like contextualize my question, like and I think some people have also said this before, that their problem sometimes with local literature is that um it can really be like tragedy porn. So it's just oh, we're just full of poverty and suffering, and like, and it's kind of just like there's that risk of desensitizing or simply just turning off a reader. So how do you plan to avoid that through the graphic novel?
that's actually a very good question. And yeah, I don't really like poverty porn too. I think we've seen too much of that already. Um, in terms of the whole graphics or illustration part, I'm not actually going to focus. Although of course it's gonna be most on the background, like for example, this again the squatters area, for example. But it's not gonna be the main focus of each panels, for example, for the illustration. Um, how do I explain this? Uh, when I do create something, usually I use the values of shadows in terms of gauging the overall mood of a specific illustration. So, for example, if the overall mood is a little bit dark, a little bit angsty, for example, I would use a lot of shadows, a lot of darkness on the illustration itself. So, I guess in terms of the art itself, the first few pages of which the story is still hopeful in the beginning, it would be a little bit more lighter, a little bit less shadow. Uh, kind of hard to explain, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much how I would do it. Um, yeah, that's actually very very good question. I think I have to to think the proper answer for that
Yeah, that's
so
okay.
far. Yeah.
Sorry, I have another like question or like a maybe something to clarify also with our comments earlier, because it seemed like it was a resounding thing that we all wanted to see, like the friendship or the bond between um Gian and the Capre. I wonder like how that will be like plot wise. Like, is it gonna be like adventures of like is it gonna be that for the bond, or um I mean, sorry, this Mark, you don't have to be the one to answer this. Maybe Raphael and Hamahiru could be the one to answer this. But because I I just realized like I don't have a specific answer for showing the friendship besides, hanging out. And I don't know
Yeah.
if that will seem boring now to some of the readers, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, people enjoy like Calvin and Hobbes, like, just those random slice of life things. So I don't know if that will be the trajectory.
Yeah. Okay. To just to quickly answer that, because that's a very good point. The reason why the main reason why I did cut the whole act of friendship was because, uh, well, according to my own, to my own 5 point act, is it's supposed to be conversations all throughout, and I did cut it because I thought it was boring and stuff like that. So, but that's actually a good way of maybe shaking things up. But yeah, maybe you have other suggestions, guys.
For me, I mean, conversation could be boring, but if it help with building the characters and maybe indirectly the story, then I don't mind if there's a lot of conversation.
Conversation.
There is
Yeah, me too. Actually.
In personally, and I'm speaking comics wise, not really on novels, but uh because comics is more of an art medium. Some would say that, well, it's actually a very big debate, but some would say that in comics, you should put the lesser words as possible as you can, because then again, show what you want, show what you want to tell, right? Because it's a visual medium. But then again, thinking about it, and that's where I mostly side on in the beginning. But now actually I'm thinking more of creating a lot of dialogues to establish a specific relationship between two characters. And it's much more it's better and much more in depth, I guess. That's the word. But yeah, thank you.
There's this one of my favorite graphic novels. It's called Mouse. It's about the
Love that.
author and oh, you know that?
Yeah, I love that.
Oh yeah, yeah. So you know how like there are chapters where it's just the author interviewing his dad, but even if it's just a Q&A, it's so interesting because it cuts to a flashback. So maybe that's where it's gonna go. Like we know that the Capre and Gian are talking, but what we are seeing is whatever it is that they're talking about. Maybe the Capre is talking about his life, you know, in the before, whatever that is. Maybe Gian's talking about school or home, or maybe they're just I don't know, like tambay, like they're just like hanging out,
Yeah.
I don't know, laughing at passersby or like creating backstories or joking around. Like maybe that would help because I don't know if this is like an advice that works for comics, but something that I've seen for writing is when you have characters and you want them to be talking and just talking, it helps that they're doing something. And that's them doing something just makes the conversation feel more natural or more tense if they're kind of like passive aggressive like that. So yeah, I don't know if that works for comics, but them doing something together would be cool. Like I don't know, like sharing the pancit and the puto maybe, and then people watching, or yeah, telling stories maybe.
Good point. Thank you very much.
I think I'd also like to see that Gian still has this naive side. Like maybe he's trying to ask something about the couple, like why is the moon always following us? I mean, if you're a child, you'd like wonder of things like weird things, and then like the couple would explain it in like a mythological sense, like oh, it's because the snake eats the moon or something. I don't know. It would be cool like having like a mythological perspective as well as like this naive side to this story. Like it's not like he's growing up so fast to the point that like I don't want to see Gian to like grow up so fast. I want to see like this naive side of him, like how he bonds with this couple, like how we usually bond with our childhood friends, like our kalaro. If you ano, like parang how we talk it with friends. Like, basta yun. I can't
Yeah, yeah,
explain it.
yeah.
Basta
That's
yun.
that's a very good point. Thank you. Thank you very much. I never thought of that. Okay.
Not super required, but like on Hamahiru's point, it would be cool to get the Capra's perspective on like the myths that we have. Because, for example, a lot of the myths that we are told is like, obviously from the human perspective, right? But what if we get like the creatures' perspective? Because, for example, we're taught to fear like, I don't know if Indonesia has the Chanak, the crying baby monster, but we have the crying baby monster. And like, what if, in the mythological world, like maybe they're not really evil. Maybe they're just, like kind of fighting back because of something. So yeah, maybe they're not inherently evil, something like that. So it would be cool to like reimagine certain things through the Capre. Like we just get their point of view. Not super required, but I mean, I'm just saying it would be fun.
Would be good. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because you mentioned this idea of him telling mythical stories. I suddenly had an association that this Manong replacing, not maybe not replacing the right word, but like basically like become his grandma, because his grandma also told him mythological stories. It's so like yeah, so he like become his grandpa. Think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Hello. Actually, would it be okay if I add something?
Sure, sure.
Okay, so I would just like to say that I really appreciated it because as a kid growing up, I didn't really have all these beliefs in like all those kinds of mythical creatures since our family never really introduced me to them because we're not that how do I say this? Filipino, some sort of thing, yeah, like that. But I really did appreciate your work because it just I don't know, like at first I was like kind of hesitant in the sense that I was thinking, oh my god, I might not understand it. But as I went along, I appreciated more because it was also how do I say this? Because it had something to do with EJK, so it really opened my eyes to something. So it's also kind of a symbolism. So yeah, good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Uh, can I ask last one? It's time already. It's okay. Thank you very much. If you can just see me right now, I'm smiling from ear to ear. Just I have this a lot of ideas. Oh my god, thank you very much. I think you just finished my story.
My God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was just carried away.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Thank you again. Oh my gosh, I've got
Yay.
things to revise, but it's all gonna be worth it. I think.
Yes, it's
Thank
gonna be
you.
worth
Definitely.
it. I have faith in you. It's gonna be worth it.
I'm really excited to
Me
see this.
also. Like I want the book already.
Mm.
I want to see the pages and the colors. Like I'm there.
If I am able to publish it and my laziness does not possess me over time, is it okay if I like um put a special things with your name maybe on the back or something?
Yeah. Of course. We don't get that often, so
Yes.
yes.
Thank you, thank you.